Today we're going to be looking at directions in the color Cerise. Okay, so I have my swatches labeled 1 through 12, but I just want to say that's not synonymous with hair levels. I do pictures and clips near the end of the video, so the numbers just help us keep track of each swatch color. These are human hair swatches, but the only one that's going to be virgin hair is the number 4 black swatch. The rest have been chemically colored or bleached at some point in their existence. 1 is green. Red and green are across from each other on the color wheel, so I wanted to see how well this pink would cover the green. 2 is gray. 3 is a natural red. 4 again is black, so 4 to 11 is a range that goes to platinum blonde, and then 12 is like a toned version of number 11. So I will take the dye directly from the container and I will apply it to the top of each swatch. And then some people do like to dilute their dyes, so I will do a diluted version at the bottom of each swatch. Please keep in mind, everyone's hair is different, which means everyone's hair will take color differently. Also, different monitors and screens can make colors look different, especially undertones. So please just use my video as a reference for how this could possibly turn out for you.
And baby, no, you can't see it's the best place for me, but I'm guessing that it's different when I'm looking from your point of view. From your point of view, oh. I said, baby, you've got things to do, and that's alright with me. But just know that when you come back home, in the same place I will be. Same place I will be. You said I won't lie, I'm yours, you're mine. Baby, going into it, I'm thinking that's gonna be hard on both of us. So we could talk about it now and just fool around. It's one of us thinking that the other one is feeling that we're both gonna cry. I know I'm tongue-tied, I've tried to take time to realize the other side isn't as scary as it seems.
For the diluted section, we're gonna do a 1 to 4 ratio. So that's gonna be 1 part of the color to 4 parts of diluter. Usually each brand will have its own version of a diluter that you can use to lighten up the color of the dyes. But to keep things more fair, I like to just use a plain white conditioner for diluting. Okay, so I'm gonna let these sit for about 3 hours so that they can really absorb the color. I will then rinse them out, and when they're dry, I will meet you back here and we'll do some comparisons. Hopefully you can tell too, but this is actually quite pigmented. The only one that seems to have stayed the same is the number 4 black swatch, which is normal. So one was originally green, that was fully covered on both the direct dye and the diluted section. But I will say it doesn't look quite as pink as like the blonde ones do. It has a slightly more purpley undertone and did come out a little bit darker looking as well. The number 2 was gray. I think on the direct dye portion you don't really see much of a difference, but on the diluted section it does look a little bit more cool toned in comparison to the blonde ones. These ones just look a little bit more warm. Number 3 was the natural red. I feel like it came out similar to the medium brown swatches. I don't think you'd really be able to tell that much that it was originally red. So 5 was a very dark brown originally. It still looks brown, but there is a slight inky tone. So maybe in natural lighting or direct sunlight, you might see slightly a bit more of pink coming through, but it does still look like a brown with just like a pinky undertone. So the number 6, I would say still has a slight brown quality, but not quite as much as the number 5 does. I guess it's especially next to the number 7. You can see that it's not quite as bright looking, but again, it leans more pink than like the number 5 in terms of how brown it stayed. I feel like I can divide this color into 2 parts. So 7 and 8 are a little bit different than 9, 10, 11, and 12. I think I would categorize these as maybe like light browns, dark blondes. And they both almost have a slightly more cool toned quality compared to the blonde ones, even on the diluted section, and just a slight bit darker. And then 9, 10, 11, and 12, they all again look very similar to each other. They're not quite as dark as the 7 and 8, which, you know, makes sense since the hair underneath is not as dark, and pull a little bit more warm toned. The diluted section for all of them is very bright, but I feel like the number 12, there's just a touch more cool toned in the diluted section. It's not as cool toned as number 2, and it's not a huge difference, but I feel like that touch more of cool tone does help it to look even more like a hot pink. But again, realistically, they all do look very bright. So I have 2 comparisons for you today. They're all gonna be pretty close to each other. I do think one of them is a little more similar than the other, so we'll start with the one that I think is gonna be less similar, and that is Lunar Tides in the color Fuchsia Pink. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. Hopefully you can see it on camera. Sometimes my phone doesn't pick up on the differences as well. Sometimes it does, but even on the direct dye portion, the Lunar Tides Fuchsia Pink pulls a lot more cool toned in comparison. But I will say I don't feel like the direct dye portions are as different as the diluted sections are, because while you can tell a difference, it's just not as dramatic until you see the ends. But realistically, if I can remember correctly, the Lunar Tides one is also quite pigmented, so it just depends on the undertone that you prefer. I think this next one is going to be more similar, and it's going to be Manic Panic in the color Fuchsia Shock. This is comparable to number 12, number 11, number 10, and number 9. So firstly, I want to say that when I did the Manic Panic video, I was pretty certain that the Fuchsia Shock, when it's diluted, is the same color as their Hot Hot Pink. So if you like their Hot Hot Pink, it might be a better value to get the Fuchsia Shock, because then you can just dilute it or even make it darker, depending on how dark your hair is. But as you can see, the Manic Panic one leans a lot darker on direct application. I'm having a hard time pinpointing the undertone differences because on number 9, for example, the Manic Panic does look like it's a little bit more cool toned, but then on number 11, it almost looks a little more warm. So I feel like the number 10 on the diluted section and number 12 on the diluted section don't look too far off from each other, which makes me think that if you had the Manic Panic, you could probably dilute it just a little bit and get a similar color to the directions. Okay, so I decided to move the number 9 swatch between the 8 and the 9 because I feel like this swatch leans a little bit darker than this original swatch does, so I want to keep it on our radar, but I don't want to look at it as intensely as I was looking at these ones, because I think it's throwing me off a little bit, similarly to how the directions looks a little bit more cool toned on the darker swatches. I think that's what was happening on the number 9 for the Manic Panic. So looking at the 10, 11, and 12, I think the directions actually is just a drop more cool toned, because I think on the 10 and the 11 and the 12 you can see, hopefully you can see the difference. And then the Manic Panic one, especially on the number 11, is a lot brighter, almost has like a neon quality to it, but realistically they're not like wildly different from each other. Manic Panic just seems to lean a little bit darker and a little bit more warm toned. Alright, so now I'd like to get into the before and after clips. Those, as well as anything you see near the end of this video, will all be done in natural lighting.
Talk about it now and just fool around. It's one of us thinking that the other one is failing, and we're both gonna cry. I know I'm tongue-tied, I've tried to take time to realize the other side isn't as scary as it seems. But the point is, girl, that I got you now. So if you let me keep loving you and show you how, if you just believe me now. your face. You something else. I'm love so I know you know there's nobody else like you.
I hope this video helped. If you have a request, I do have a link below to a Google form you can fill out. Just remember, I only do brands that do not test on animals. Thank you so much to my patrons, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video.